The trading station orbited a dying red star, its metal bones creaking with the weight of 1,000 different species seeking fortune, refuge, or simply a moment's rest. Commander Hal watched from the observation deck as another transport ship docked, its hull from what looked like recent combat. His 4 eyes tracked the various beings that emerged, cataloging them by threat level as years of military service had trained him to do. Merchants from the sector shuffled out first, their tentacles loaded with secured cargo containers. A group of mercenaries followed, their scales gleaming under the artificial lights, weapons prominently displayed on their hips. Then came the usual assortment of travelers, refugees, and wanderers that populated every corner of civilized space. But it was the last figure that made Hal's mandibles click in interest. She walked alone, and that was the first unusual thing. In a galaxy where survival often meant traveling in packs, lone travelers were either incredibly dangerous or incredibly foolish. The second unusual thing was the armor. It was unlike anything in the standard databases, a dull gray metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The design was strange, angular in places where most species preferred curves to deflect energy weapons, with a helmet that completely obscured the wearer's features. The figure moved with purpose, each step deliberate and measured, not the swagger of a mercenary or the hurried shuffle of a refugee, something else entirely. "Sir, should we run a security scan?" asked Lieutenant, her sensor stalks extended toward the viewport. Hal considered it. The station had protocols, but they also had a reputation for respecting privacy. Too many security checks, and traders would take their business elsewhere. "Monitor only, unless she causes trouble." The armored figure proceeded through the main concourse, drawing stares from every direction. She was small, Hal noted, smaller than most sentient species, perhaps 1.5 meters at most. The armor added bulk, but underneath the frame seemed almost delicate. She stopped at a merchant's stall, and even from the observation deck, Hal could see the vendor's surprise. The merchant was known for dealing in rare metals and refined materials. After a brief exchange, the armored figure reached into a compartment on her suit and something. Even through the long-range sensors, the energy signature was unmistakable. "That's refined palladium crystal," breathed. "Grade A, that amount would buy a small ship." The transaction completed quickly. The scales flushed orange with excitement as he handed over a data chip and what looked like a medical kit. The armored figure nodded once and moved on. "Where's she going?" Hal asked. Stalks twitched as she consulted her display. "Medical district, the public terminals." That was interesting. With that much wealth, she could afford private medical facilities. Why use public terminals? The armored figure entered the medical district, which was little more than a converted cargo bay with sanitized walls and automated treatment pods. A few injured beings waited on benches, some bleeding, others clearly suffering from radiation sickness or chemical exposure. This was where those without credits or status came when hurt. She approached a terminal and inserted the data chip. The screen flickered to life, cycling through medical databases. Hal enhanced the feed, trying to see what she was searching for, but the angle was wrong. After several minutes, the figure seemed to find what she needed. She stood motionless for a moment, then her shoulders sagged slightly. It was the first sign of emotion, of humanity, she had displayed. Then she turned and walked to one of the automated treatment pods, the kind used for minor injuries and diagnostics. She stood before it for a long moment, her helmeted head tilted as if in contemplation. What happened next made Hal's breath catch in all 4 of his throats. She reached up and unsealed her helmet. The locks released with a hiss of pressurized air, and she pulled the helmet free. Hair spilled out, a cascade of brown and gold that caught the harsh medical lights. The face that emerged was young, impossibly young, with smooth skin unmarked by the scars and modifications that most spacefaring species accumulated. 2 eyes positioned forward on a flat face, a small nose and mouth, the features of a species Hal didn't recognize. "Run that through the database," he ordered. "Full scan." His fingers flew across her console. "Running now, sir, but initial scans are strange. She's registering high levels of stress hormones, elevated heart rate, and her bone density is remarkable for her size. Whatever species she is, she's under significant physical strain." The database search completed and went very still. "Sir, you need to see this." Hal moved to her station, his eyes scanning the results. Then he read them again, certain there had been a mistake. Human, he said slowly. From Earth, but that's impossible. Earth is a restricted world. Level 5 quarantine, no contact allowed. The database says humans are pre-civilization, added, her voice uncertain. Confined to their home planet. Violent, territorial, experiencing constant internal conflicts. The Galactic Council deemed them too unstable for contact decades ago. Yet here one stood, wearing armor that was clearly not made by any known spacefaring civilization, carrying refined materials worth a fortune, and moving through the galaxy alone. How did she get off-world? Whispered. That was the question, wasn't it? Earth was monitored by automated defense satellites designed to prevent humans from leaving and other species from interfering. The penalties for breaking quarantine were severe. Entire fleets had been disbanded for less. On the screen, the human girl had removed more of her armor. First the gauntlets, revealing hands that trembled slightly. Then the chest plate, and Hal heard's sharp intake of breath. The human was injured. Dark bruises covered her arms, mottled purple and yellow against pale skin. There was a wound on her side, poorly bandaged, that leaked a red fluid. Blood, Hal remembered from the database. Humans had red blood, copper-based chemistry, rare in the galaxy. But it was what else they saw that made the situation far more complex. The human's body was thin, too thin, ribs visible beneath the skin, signs of malnutrition, dehydration, and prolonged stress. This was not a healthy member of her species. This was someone who had been through something terrible. She pressed a hand to the wound on her side and winced, the first sound she had made. A small gasp of pain that the station's audio sensors barely picked up. She's dying, said quietly. Those injuries, if left untreated, will kill her in days, maybe hours. The human girl seemed to know this too. She fed credits into the treatment pod and stepped inside. The machine hummed to life, its sensors scanning her body, its automated medical protocols engaging. But almost immediately, warning lights began to flash. The pod's rejecting her, Hal realized. It doesn't have her species in its medical database. It doesn't know how to treat her. The human stared at the flashing error messages, and for the first time her composure cracked. She slumped against the pod's interior wall, her face a mask of exhaustion and despair. She had come so far, survived so much, and now the simplest medical treatment was beyond reach because her species was unknown to the galaxy. Hal made a decision that would change everything. Send a security team, medical escort. I want her brought to the private medical bay. Sir, she's human. The quarantine protocols are already broken, Hal interrupted. She's here in violation of every law the Council has established. We can either help her and find out how and why, or we can watch her die and learn nothing. Besides, she's just a child. That last part surprised him, the emotion in his own voice. But looking at the exhausted, injured girl trying so hard to stay standing, he couldn't help but see someone who needed help. The security team arrived quickly, weapons drawn but not aimed. The human girl's head snapped up at their approach, and suddenly the exhaustion vanished. Her hand went to a device on her belt, a weapon of some kind, her stance shifting into something defensive and dangerous. Easy, the lead guard, a massive named, said in standard galactic common. We're here to help. The human girl stared at them, her strange forward-facing eyes moving from guard to guard, calculating odds, measuring distances. She said something in a language the translator couldn't immediately process, her voice rough with disuse. Repeat that, said, adjusting his translator. The girl tried again, slower this time, and the translator finally caught enough patterns to work with. I can pay, whatever treatment costs. I have materials, refined goods. No payment necessary, replied. Commander's orders, you're injured, we have better medical facilities. Suspicion filled her eyes, and Hal understood it. In a galaxy where nothing was free, kindness was often a trap. Why? It was a good question. Why would a station commander help someone who had violated the most serious laws of the Galactic Council? Looked uncertain, so Hal activated the guard's comm unit and spoke directly. Because you're hurt, he said simply, and because I want to know your story. How a human girl ended up in the middle of civilized space wearing armor that shouldn't exist. There was a long pause. The girl swayed slightly, her hand moving from her weapon to press against her injured side. Blood seeped between her fingers. I don't have much time, she said finally, and it wasn't clear if she meant time before she died or time before something else happened. And there are things you need to know about Earth, about what's happening there. Then come with us, Hal urged. Let us help you, then you can tell us everything. The girl looked at the failed treatment pod, at her blood-stained hand, at the security team waiting patiently. She looked like she wanted to refuse, like she wanted to handle everything herself as she clearly had been doing. But her body betrayed her. Her legs buckled and caught her before she hit the floor. Medical bay now, Hal ordered, and someone bring her armor, all of it. As the team carried the unconscious human away, Hal stared at the data still scrolling across his screens. A human, off-world, alone, injured, and carrying technology that shouldn't exist. Whatever story this girl had to tell, it was going to change everything they thought they knew about Earth and its people. He just hoped they could keep her alive long enough to hear it. In the medical bay, Dr. Thane, a medical expert with 6 manipulator arms, examined the human with fascination and concern. Her physiology is remarkable, he muttered, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into common. Dense musculature, redundant organ systems, aggressive immune response. But she's been pushed far beyond safe limits. Starvation, dehydration, multiple injuries at various stages of healing. Some of these wounds are weeks old. Can you treat her? Hal asked. With the proper database information, yes. I've pulled everything we have on human biology from the quarantine archives. It's limited but workable. Thane's eye stalks focused on Hal. But Commander, you understand what you've done by bringing her here, if the Council finds out. Let me worry about the Council, Hal interrupted. Just save her. Thane returned to work, his arms moving with practiced efficiency as he set up intravenous lines, applied healing gel to her wounds, and programmed the medical pod with adjusted parameters. The human girl remained unconscious through it all, her chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. It was only when Thane removed the rest of her armor that they discovered the full extent of what she had endured. More bruises, more scars, and something else. Burns, systematic and patterned, that could only have come from one source. Torture, Thane said quietly. These marks are from energy restraints, and these, chemical burns from interrogation techniques. Someone hurt this child deliberately and extensively. Hal felt anger stir in his chest, hot and fierce. How long ago? Weeks, maybe a month. She escaped from somewhere terrible and has been running ever since. As if in response to their words, the human girl's eyes snapped open. The human girl fought against Dr. Thane's restraining arms with surprising strength, her eyes wild with panic. She gasped something in her native language, words tumbling over each other too fast for the translator to process. Then she focused, seeing where she was, seeing the medical equipment around her, and forced herself to stillness. Easy, Thane said, his voice modulated to calming frequencies. You're safe, you're in medical care. Her eyes darted to the IV lines in her arms, the monitors attached to her chest, the healing gel covering her wounds. Then to the door, calculating escape routes even now. How long was I unconscious? 43 minutes, Hal said from the doorway. Long enough for us to stabilize you, not long enough to fix everything that's wrong. She turned her head to look at him, those strange binocular eyes focusing with disturbing intensity. Humans were predators, Hal remembered from the files. Pursuit predators with stamina that could outlast almost any other species. Those forward-facing eyes were designed to track prey across long distances. My armor, she said, where is it? Secured, along with your weapons and supplies. Hal moved closer, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. You're on the trading station Epsilon 7 in the Outer Rim sector. I'm Commander Hal, Station Security. You collapsed in the public medical district. She absorbed this information with a slight nod, her body relaxing incrementally. I need my gear back. Eventually, yes, first you need to heal, and second you need to tell me how a human got off Earth. Hal pulled up a chair and sat, making himself less imposing. Earth is quarantined, level 5 restriction, the most severe classification possible, yet here you are. The girl's jaw tightened and she looked away. The quarantine failed. 3 words that sent ice through Hal's veins. Explain. She was silent for a long moment, and Thane took the opportunity to check her vital signs, adjusting medications and nutrient flows. Finally, she spoke, her voice flat and emotionless in a way that suggested trauma too deep to process. 3 months ago, ships appeared in Earth's orbit, not human ships. We don't have anything that advanced yet. These were different, angular, massive, with technology centuries beyond ours. She paused, swallowing hard. We thought first contact was happening. Governments prepared speeches. Scientists gathered data. Everyone was excited. Let me guess, Hal said quietly. They weren't friendly. They were slavers, the girl said, and now emotion crept into her voice. Anger hot and barely controlled. They bypassed the quarantine satellites like they weren't even there, landed in major cities across the planet. Beijing, New York, London, Mumbai, dozens more, and they started taking people. Hal's mandibles clicked in agitation. Slavers operating in council space was bad enough, but breaching a quarantine world? That was an act of war against the council itself. What species? I don't know the names. Reptilian, big, maybe 3 meters tall, gray scales, red eyes, weapons that could disintegrate entire buildings. She looked at her hands, which were clenched into fists. Our militaries tried to fight back. Missiles, jets, tanks, everything we had. Nothing worked. Their shields absorbed everything, and then they started making examples. She didn't elaborate, but she didn't need to. Hal could imagine what examples meant to beings desperate to break a population's will. They took millions of us, the girl continued. Loaded us into transport ships. I was taken from my school, just grabbed right out of a classroom along with 30 other kids. They put us in holding cells, dozens crammed into spaces meant for half that number. No food, little water, no explanation. Thane made a distressed sound, his translator struggling to convey the emotion. How did you escape? A bitter smile crossed her face. I didn't, not at first. They sorted us, categorized us. I heard them talking about labor worlds, pleasure stations, experimental facilities. Human bodies are apparently valuable. We're adaptable, resilient, can survive in harsh conditions. Perfect slaves. She stopped, breathing hard, and Thane adjusted something on the medical console. Her heart rate was spiking, stress hormones flooding her system. You don't have to continue right now, Hal said, though part of him desperately wanted to hear more. If slavers were operating this brazenly, the entire council needed to know. No, the girl said firmly. You need to hear this. Everyone needs to know. She took a steadying breath. They took me to a facility. I don't know where, some moon or station. Everything looked the same. Gray walls, cold air, the smell of fear everywhere. They ran tests on us. Physical capabilities, pain tolerance, psychological breaking points. The clinical way she described it was somehow worse than if she had been emotional. This was a child recounting systematic abuse as if it were a science experiment. There were others there, she continued. Not just humans, dozens of species I'd never seen before, all prisoners, all being processed for sale. And that's when I learned about the galaxy, about you, about the thousands of civilizations out there, about the council that's supposed to prevent things like this. There was accusation in her tone, and Hal couldn't blame her. If the council's quarantine had failed, if slavers were harvesting humans with impunity, then the system designed to protect developing civilizations had catastrophically broken down. How long were you imprisoned? Thane asked gently. 5 weeks. They moved us 3 times, always to different facilities, and at each one I watched. I learned. These slavers, they're arrogant. They see species like humans as beneath them, not worth worrying about. They didn't guard us as carefully as they should have. You found a way out, Hal guessed. I made a way out, she corrected. There was an engineer, a prisoner from a species that looked like walking mantises. He was being held in the cell next to ours. He could see I was watching the guards, learning their patterns. He started teaching me through the walls, told me about technology, about how the station worked, about weak points in their security. Her eyes took on a faraway look, remembering. His name was ClickSpeech 7. That's the closest I can translate it. He told me he'd been a prisoner for 2 years. He knew he wasn't getting out, but he said maybe I could. Maybe I could tell people what was happening. So I did, I got out, but ClickSpeech 7 didn't make it. He caused a distraction, overloaded a power conduit that opened the cell doors. In the chaos, I ran, found a transport bay, stole a shuttle, and just flew. She said it so simply, as if stealing a spacecraft and escaping from armed slavers was a minor accomplishment. Hal noticed Thane's eye stalks had gone rigid with astonishment. You had never flown before, Thane said. Human civilization doesn't have capabilities. I crashed twice before I figured out the controls, she admitted. But I'm a fast learner, and I was motivated, flew for 3 days before I found a trading convoy. They were suspicious, but I had taken supplies from the slaver facility. Medical equipment, refined materials, data chips with information about the operation. I traded what I could for food, for directions, for information about this region of space. And the armor? Hal asked, nodding toward where her equipment was stored. Built it myself. Took me 2 weeks, working in the cargo hold of a transport where the crew let me stay in exchange for labor. I studied the designs of the slaver tech, combined it with human engineering principles. It's not perfect, but it works. Not perfect, Hal thought, but she had created functional powered armor from salvage and determination. The engineers on this station couldn't do that with full workshops and years of training. You said there are millions of humans being taken, Hal said, bringing the conversation back to the critical point. Are the operations still ongoing? The girl's face hardened. As of 2 weeks ago, yes. I intercepted communications before I left that sector. The slavers have expanded operations. They're not even hiding anymore. They've set up permanent extraction facilities on Earth, processing centers on 3 moons in our solar system, and transport routes throughout this sector. That's impossible, Hal said, but even as he spoke, he knew it wasn't. If the slavers had compromised the quarantine satellites, if they had council-level technology, or better, if they were organized enough to operate this extensively, then yes, it was very possible. I have proof, the girl said. Data I stole from their systems, facility locations, transport schedules, communication protocols, everything. It's on one of my data chips, encrypted. She tried to sit up again, and this time Thane let her, adjusting the bed so she could be upright. I need to get this information to someone who can stop them. I thought maybe here, a trading station, there would be council representatives or military personnel who could act. Hal felt a sinking sensation. The nearest council military base is 3 weeks away by standard drive, and even if I could contact them, the bureaucracy involved in investigating a quarantine breach would take months. Months, the girl's voice rose. Every day, thousands more humans are being taken, families torn apart, children sold to the highest bidder, people dying in those facilities. We don't have months. I understand, but... No, you don't understand. She swung her legs over the side of the bed, ignoring Thane's protests. You have no idea what it's like to watch your entire civilization being harvested. To see ships coming down day after day, taking more people, and knowing that no help is coming because the galaxy has decided we're not worth protecting yet. She stood, swayed, and Hal moved to steady her. She pushed his hands away, standing on her own through sheer force of will. I escaped so I could bring this information to people who could do something about it, she said, her voice tight with controlled fury. I watched good beings die helping me get free. I've been running, hiding, barely surviving for weeks. I built armor from scraps, learned to fly ships I'd never seen before, crossed half the sector, all so I could get help. Tears were running down her face now, though her voice remained steady. And you're telling me there's nothing you can do? The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Hal looked at this young human, battered and exhausted but still standing, still fighting, and made another decision that would define his future. I didn't say there was nothing I could do, he said carefully. I said the official channels would take too long, but there are other options. The girl wiped her eyes, focusing on him with sudden intensity. What options? This is a trading station, Hal explained. We see all kinds here. Merchants, mercenaries, pirates, privateers, information brokers, and people who operate in the gray spaces between legal and illegal. If what you're describing is true, if there's a major slaving operation running in this sector, then there are people here interested. How? The girl asked, suspicion creeping back into her voice. She had learned not to trust easy promises, Hal realized. Smart, given what she had survived. Slavers make enemies, Hal explained. They disrupt trade, steal potential customers and workers, operate outside council regulations which affects everyone's business. The criminal organizations that run this part of space have their own codes, their own rules. And one of those rules is that you don't make the heat come down on everyone by drawing council attention. He moved to a console and pulled up a star chart, highlighting several systems. These are known slaver routes based on intelligence we've gathered over the years. If your information confirms these locations and adds new ones, then certain organizations would pay well for it. More than that, they'd act on it. Pirates raiding slaver convoys, mercenaries hitting their facilities, information brokers selling their positions to rival groups. It would tear their operation apart from the inside. The girl studied the map, her expression thoughtful. You're talking about starting a war. I'm talking about using the existing chaos of this sector to your advantage, Hal corrected. The slavers think they can operate with impunity. Let's prove them wrong. And what do you get out of this? She asked, cutting straight to the practical question. Why help me? Hal appreciated her directness. Honestly, because slavers operating this openly is bad for business. Bad for the station, bad for everyone who trades here. And because you're right that the official channels move too slowly. Sometimes you need to work outside the system. He didn't mention the other reason, the one that surprised even him. That looking at this determined young human who had survived so much, he couldn't help but want to see her succeed. The galaxy had written off her species as too primitive, too violent, not ready for the wider universe. But here she stood, having accomplished things that most trained operatives couldn't manage. There's a meeting tonight, Hal continued. Merchants, captains, people with resources and connections, they gather in the lower docks to discuss opportunities. If you can present your case, show them the data you've gathered, I think you'll find willing partners. Partners in what exactly? The girl crossed her arms, a defensive gesture that made her look even younger. A rescue mission, an assault on slaver facilities. Whatever they decide, Hal said. But at minimum, you'll get the word out. Once people know about the operation, once the locations are compromised, the slavers will have to pull back or risk serious retaliation. The girl considered this, her eyes distant as she calculated odds and outcomes. Finally, she nodded. All right, I'll meet with them, but I want my armor back first. Agreed, Hal said. But you should rest first. Dr. Thane says you need at least 12 more hours of treatment. I've been running on less than 12 hours of sleep total for the past week, she replied. I'll manage a few more hours. Thane made a disapproving sound but began disconnecting the monitoring equipment. At least let me fit you with a medical monitor. If your vitals drop to dangerous levels, it will alert me. The girl agreed to this compromise, and soon she was dressed in simple station clothes, her armor and equipment being returned piece by piece. Hal watched as she checked each item methodically, the ritual of someone who had learned that survival depended on knowing exactly what resources you had available. When she reached for her helmet, she paused, running her fingers over a dent in the metal. This was from the second facility, she said quietly. A guard hit me with a shock baton, cracked 3 of my ribs, but the armor held, kept me conscious long enough to take his weapon and fight back. She said it matter-of-factly, but Hal heard the weight behind the words. This armor wasn't just equipment to her. It was a symbol of her resistance, proof that she could fight back against beings far more powerful. What's your name? Hal asked, realizing he'd been thinking of her only as the human girl this whole time. She looked up, surprised by the question. Sarah, though honestly, I've been going by different names at different stations. Safer that way. Well, Sarah, Hal said, let's go introduce you to the people who might be able to help save your species. They made their way through the station's lower levels, where the polished corridors of the commercial districts gave way to rougher passages lined with questionable establishments. This was where deals happened that wouldn't survive scrutiny from official channels, where ships docked that didn't want their cargo inspected, where beings came when they needed things done without asking too many questions. Sarah walked beside Hal with her helmet under her arm, drawing curious stares. Word had spread quickly through the station about the armored figure in the medical district. Now, seeing her face, seeing that she was young and human, the stares intensified. They're wondering how you got here, Hal said quietly. Earth is famous in certain circles, a death world producing a species that survived everything their planet threw at them. Some people collect rumors about humans the way others collect rare artifacts. Death world, Sarah asked. A planet with extreme conditions that forge extremely resilient species, Hal explained. High gravity, dangerous predators, frequent natural disasters, disease, competition for resources. Most civilizations develop on garden worlds where survival is relatively easy. Earth is not that. By galactic standards, it's a nightmare that somehow produced sentient life. Sarah snorted softly. That's one way to describe it. We've always joked that Earth is trying to kill us. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, extreme temperatures, poisonous plants and animals, viruses that jump species. You name it, we've survived it. Which is why some beings feared allowing humans into galactic society, Hal said. A species forged by such conditions, with such aggressive tendencies and such adaptability, could either become humanity's greatest strength or its greatest weakness. The Council chose caution. And look how well that worked out, Sarah said bitterly. Their caution left us defenseless. They reached the meeting location, a repurposed cargo bay that had been converted into something between a bar and a gathering hall. The air was thick with smoke from various substances, and the lighting was deliberately dim. Beings of a dozen species sat at tables or stood in clusters, their conversations creating a low hum of activity. When Hal and Sarah entered, conversation stopped. Every eye in the room turned toward them. "Commander," someone called out. It was Rax, a merchant who dealt in weapons and information. "Heard you picked up something interesting today." "Indeed," Hal said, his voice carrying across the sudden silence. "This is Sarah. She has information about a major slaving operation that's been running in this sector, information that I think you'll all find valuable." A tall, thin being with skin like polished obsidian stepped forward. This was Merchant Kell, who controlled most of the shipping routes through this region. "A human," he said, his translator rendering his language into perfect common. "From a quarantined world, this should be reported to the Council immediately." "The Council quarantine has been compromised," Sarah said, stepping forward and meeting his gaze without flinching. "Slavers have been harvesting humans from Earth for 3 months. Millions taken. Facilities set up across our solar system, and I have data on their entire operation." The room erupted in conversation. Some beings seemed intrigued, others skeptical, a few actively hostile. Sarah stood her ground, waiting for the noise to die down. "Why should we believe you?" someone shouted from the back. Sarah reached into her armor and a data chip, holding it up so everyone could see. "Because I have proof. Facility locations, transport routes, security protocols, financial records, communication logs, everything. I stole it from their systems before I escaped." She looked around the room, meeting eyes with as many beings as possible. "I know who you all are. I've learned about this part of space these past weeks. You're the ones who move goods that governments don't want moved, who go places officials won't, who do jobs that need doing without asking permission." "So you want us to be heroes?" Rax asked, amusement in his voice. "No," Sarah said flatly. "I want you to be smart. The slavers are taking my people, yes. But they're also operating in your territory under your noses, drawing the kind of attention that could get the Council military involved. That's bad for all of you." She activated the data chip, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room. Star charts, facility layouts, transport schedules, all rotating slowly for everyone to see. "They have 6 major processing centers," Sarah explained, her voice steady and professional now. She had prepared for this, Hal realized, had thought through exactly what these people would need to hear. 3 in the outer rim, 2 in the border systems, 1 in what your maps call the neutral zone. They're moving product through 17 established routes, all marked here. She zoomed in on one of the facilities. This one processes approximately 10,000 beings per week. Mixed species, not just humans. They have minimal security because they've paid off the local authorities. 3 destroyers for protection, automated defenses, maybe 200 armed personnel on site at any given time. "You're suggesting we hit them," Merchant Kell said slowly. "Attack slaver facilities." "I'm suggesting you protect your interests," Sarah corrected. "These slavers are expanding. Right now it's humans because we're easy targets, but once they've stripped Earth, do you think they'll stop? They've proven they can bypass Council quarantines. What's to stop them from hitting other worlds, other populations?" She let that sink in, then continued. "But if their operation gets disrupted now, if their facilities get raided, their transports hit, their routes compromised, then they'll have to pull back. Regroup. Maybe think twice about operating so openly in this sector." "And if we do this," a voice from the crowd asked, "what do you expect to get out of it?" Sarah's expression hardened. "I want my people freed, every human in their facilities released and returned to Earth. I want their operation shut down completely, and I want the beings responsible to face justice." "Justice?" someone laughed. "You're in the wrong part of space for that, human." "Then I'll settle for revenge," Sarah said coldly, and the laughter stopped. "I've seen what they do in those facilities, the experiments, the torture, the casual brutality. I've watched people die begging for mercy that never came. So yes, I want them stopped, but I also want them to hurt." The brutal honesty seemed to reach the crowd more than appeals to morality would have. These were beings who understood revenge, who respected the desire for payback. "There's money to be made too," Hal added, knowing his audience. "Slavers deal in high-value goods. Their facilities are full of refined materials, advanced technology, credits they've collected from sales. Anyone who hits them gets to keep what they find. Now he had their full attention. The possibility of profit always did. But this isn't without risk, Merchant Kell said. Slavers have protection, corrupt officials, paid mercenaries, connections to larger criminal networks. Moving against them could start feuds that last years. True, Sarah acknowledged. But consider this, I'm just one person, one escaped slave who figured out their operation and made it here alone. If I could do that, what do you think organized, experienced crews could accomplish? These slavers aren't invincible. They're sloppy, overconfident, and complacent. They're vulnerable. Provide the data to anyone who wants it, Sarah continued. Free of charge, but I have conditions. First, any humans you free get safe passage back to Earth or to refugee stations. Second, you share intelligence about other facilities you discover. And third, if you find any of the beings who helped me escape, the ones still trapped in those facilities, you get them out. That's a lot to ask for free information, someone muttered. Then don't take it, Sarah said with a shrug. I'm sure the Council would be interested in detailed reports about illegal slaving operations in their space, along with names of every merchant and captain who knew about it but did nothing. The threat was clear and effective. Merchant Kell made a sound that might have been a laugh. You learn quickly, human. Very well, I'll take a copy of your data, and I know 3 captains who might be interested in coordinating a strike. Others stepped forward, requesting copies of the data chip. Sarah had come prepared with multiple copies, handing them out while recording who received what. Smart, Hal thought. She was keeping track of who had the information, creating a network of accountability. As the meeting broke up into smaller discussions, a figure approached Sarah. This was Captain, a battle-scarred who commanded a well-armed frigate. His species looked like walking armored tanks, and his reputation matched his appearance. You fought your way out of a slaver facility, he said, his translator giving his words a grinding quality. Alone. Yes, Sarah confirmed. And built that armor yourself? Yes. Studied her for a long moment. My crew could use someone with your skills. We hit targets like this regularly. Pay is good, work is steady, and you get to kill slavers. Interested? Sarah seemed surprised by the offer. I'm not a mercenary. No, you're a survivor with combat experience and technical knowledge, corrected. That's more valuable than most mercenaries. Think about it. You want to free your people? You'll do more good fighting alongside experienced crews than trying to do everything yourself. He handed her a data chip. My contact information. Offer stands for the next 72 hours. As walked away, Sarah looked at the chip in her hand with an expression Hal couldn't quite read. Is he legitimate? She asked quietly. As legitimate as anyone in this room, Hal replied. Is known for keeping his word and running a professional operation. If he says he'll get prisoners out, he will. Sarah pocketed the chip without comment, but Hal could see her mind working, considering possibilities and probabilities. The next few hours passed in a blur of conversations. Sarah spoke with captain after captain, merchant after merchant, explaining details about the slaver operation and answering technical questions. Hal watched her shift seamlessly between modes of communication, adjusting her approach for each species and individual. With Rax, she focused on the intelligence value. With Merchant Kell on trade route disruptions. With the mercenary captains on tactical vulnerabilities. She was, Hal realized, far more sophisticated than her age suggested. Whether that was natural talent or something forced upon her by circumstances, he couldn't say. Probably both. It was well into the station's night cycle when the last of the interested parties departed. Sarah sagged against a wall, exhaustion finally showing through her controlled facade. You did well, Hal said. I count at least 15 groups who will act on your information. Will it be enough? Sarah asked. 15 crews against a network that spans dozens of systems. It's a start, and once word spreads about successful raids, others will join in. There's nothing pirates and mercenaries like more than proven opportunities. He paused, then asked, What will you do now? Sarah was quiet for a moment. I don't know. Part of me wants to accept offer, keep fighting. Another part thinks I should try to reach Earth, warn people about what's happening. You can't go back, Hal said gently. The slavers control Earth's orbit. They'd capture you again the moment you appeared. I know, but my family is there. My friends, my teachers, everyone I knew, and I'm out here while they're being hunted. Her voice cracked slightly. I was in chemistry class when they came, just sitting there learning about molecular bonds, and then the windows exploded and these things came through and started grabbing people. She pressed her hands to her face, breathing hard. My best friend, Maya, she tried to run. They shot her with something that made her collapse. I watched them drag her onto their ship while I was frozen in fear. And then they grabbed me too, and I couldn't do anything. Hal let her talk, understanding that she needed to release the pressure that had been building. All her control, all her careful planning and fighting, it was held together by sheer force of will. But underneath, she was still a scared child who had seen her world destroyed. I promised myself I'd get free, Sarah continued. That I'd find help, that I'd make them pay for what they did, and I have, partly, but Maya is still out there somewhere, and millions like her. How do I rest knowing that? You can't save everyone, Hal said. Not alone, but you've started something tonight. You've given people the tools to fight back. That matters. Does it? Sarah lowered her hands, and her eyes were red but dry. Or have I just made myself feel better by outsourcing my revenge? You've done what warriors throughout history have done when facing overwhelming odds, Hal replied. You found allies. There's no shame in that. Sarah laughed bitterly. Warriors, I'm 17 years old. I should be worried about exams and college applications, not coordinating raids against alien slavers. 17. Hal had suspected she was young, but hearing it confirmed was still jarring. In most civilized species, 17 was barely old enough for basic responsibilities. This human had survived torture, escaped impossible odds, crossed hostile space, and just convinced a room full of hardened criminals to go to war. What were you studying? Hal asked, trying to ground her in something normal. Before all this. Engineering. I wanted to build spacecraft, ironically enough, design ships that could take humanity to the stars. She smiled sadly. Guess I got my wish, just not the way I imagined. A commotion from the corridor interrupted them. Shouting, the sound of weapons fire, and then an explosion that shook the deck plates. Hal's communicator erupted with emergency signals. Sir, we have intruders. Lieutenant's voice was strained. 3 ships just docked without authorization. They're breaching airlocks on levels 7 and 9. We have armed forces moving through the station. Hal was already moving, Sarah right behind him. Who are they? Unknown, but their ships match descriptions of slaver vessels from the database. Sir, they're hunting for something specific. Hal and Sarah exchanged looks. They're here for me, Sarah said. Someone must have tracked me. How? Hal demanded. I don't know, maybe the shuttle I stole had a tracking device I didn't find. Maybe someone at one of the stations I visited sold information. Does it matter? She was already sealing her armor, movements quick and practiced. I brought this to your station. I'll lead them away. Don't be stupid, Hal snapped. You'll be captured or killed in minutes. Then what do you suggest? Another explosion, closer this time. Smoke began filtering through the ventilation system, and emergency lights activated. The station's automated defense systems engaged, but Hal knew they wouldn't hold long against a determined assault. He made a quick decision. Follow me. There's a secure bunker in the command center. We can hold there while my security forces engage them. They ran through the corridors, past panicking civilians and responding security teams. Hal's mind raced through tactical considerations. If the slavers had tracked Sarah here, they'd come prepared. Multiple ships, armed forces, probably bribes or threats to overcome resistance. This wasn't a random raid. This was a planned extraction. Which meant Sarah was more important than she'd let on. What aren't you telling me? Hal asked as they took a maintenance shaft that bypassed the main corridors. Why are they trying this hard to recover one escaped slave? Sarah didn't answer immediately, focused on climbing the shaft's ladder with her armored bulk. Finally, she said, because I'm not just any escaped slave. I'm a problem. Explain. The data I stole, it wasn't just operational information. It included financial records, client lists, payment histories. Names of officials they've bribed, politicians they've bought, military officers on their payroll. That information could bring down their entire network if it reaches the right people. And they know you have it, Hal realized. They know someone stole it. They've been hunting me for weeks, hitting every station I visited. But I've always stayed ahead of them, until now. They reached the command center, where several other officers were coordinating the defense. Screens showed multiple breach points, with armored figures moving through the station in organized assault patterns. "They're not killing anyone," reported. "Stunning civilians, bypassing defenders when possible. They're definitely looking for something specific." "Me," Sarah said, studying the tactical displays. "How many are there?" "We count 47 hostiles across 3 breach points, but they're well-equipped and coordinated. Station security is taking casualties." Sarah watched the screens, her expression calculating. Hal could almost see her mind working, processing information and forming plans. "I have an idea," she said suddenly, "but it's risky." "Right now, everything is risky," Hal replied. "What do you have in mind?" "They're hunting me specifically, which means they're probably monitoring communications, looking for any mention of a human or unusual presence. We can use that." She pointed to one of the screens showing a large cargo bay. "That's near their ships, right?" "Within 2 decks, confirmed." "Then I draw them there. Broadcast my location, make them think I'm trying to escape via their ships. When they concentrate forces to capture me, your security teams hit them from behind." Classic pincer movement. "You'll be surrounded," Hal protested. "That's the idea. They want me alive, remember? They won't use lethal force if they think they can capture me, but your people don't have that limitation." Sarah was already moving toward the door. "It's the best chance to end this quickly with minimal casualties." Hal wanted to argue, but he couldn't deny the logic. If they let the slavers continue searching, the station would take more damage and more people would be hurt. Sarah's plan was dangerous, but it might work. "At least take a security team with you," he insisted. "No, if they see I have backup, they'll adjust tactics. I need to look isolated and desperate." She checked her armor systems, the helmet sealing with that familiar hiss. "Besides, I've survived worse odds." Watched the tactical displays with growing dread as Sarah's armored form appeared on multiple security feeds, moving deliberately toward the cargo bay she had identified. She was making herself visible, almost taunting the pursuers. "Sir, she's broadcasting on an open channel," reported. "Audio only." "Let me hear it." Sarah's voice came through the speakers, slightly distorted by her armor's systems, but clear enough. "Attention, slaver forces. This is the human you're looking for. I'm heading to Cargo Bay 7, your docking location. If you want me, come get me." It was a challenge and an invitation, delivered with an edge of desperation that was probably calculated. The slavers would hear a trapped fugitive making a last desperate gamble, not a tactical ploy. Sure enough, the tactical displays showed the slaver forces immediately changing direction, converging on Cargo Bay 7 from multiple angles. They were taking the bait. "Move our forces into position," Hal ordered. "Surround their approach vectors but stay out of sight. Wait for my signal." His security teams were already moving, using the station's service corridors to get into position. 30 armed personnel against 47 invaders. Not great odds, but Sarah's plan would give them the element of surprise. On the screens, Sarah reached the cargo bay and immediately began working on one of the slaver ship's access panels. Her movements were frantic, but Hal noticed she was actually just going through motions, not really attempting to break in. She was selling the performance. The first slaver team arrived within minutes. 6 heavily armored figures, weapons raised, moving with professional precision. Their armor was sleek and advanced, marked with symbols that Hal's database identified as belonging to the Syndicate, one of the largest slaving operations in this sector. "Surrender, human," the lead slaver called out, his translator rendering the command in multiple languages. "You cannot escape. Come peacefully and you will not be harmed further." Sarah straightened, turning to face them. Even through the armor, Hal could sense her tension. She was calculating distances, identifying weapons, preparing for what came next. "I know what your peaceful means," Sarah replied. "I've seen your interrogation rooms." "Then you know resistance is futile. We have 50 personnel on this station. You are alone. Surrender." Sarah's hand moved to her weapon, and Hal saw what she was doing. She was buying time, keeping them talking while more forces arrived. Smart. "How did you find me?" she asked. The lead slaver tilted his head. "You are not as clever as you think, little human. The shuttle you stole had multiple tracking systems. We have followed your path across 5 stations. We know about the data you took. We know about the meetings you have been arranging." That surprised Hal. If they knew about the meetings, knew about the data being distributed, then this wasn't just about recovering a slave. This was about damage control. More slaver teams arrived, surrounding Sarah from multiple angles. 20, 30, 40 personnel, all focused on the single armored figure in the center of the cargo bay. Sarah slowly raised her hands, still holding her weapon loosely. "Smart," the lead slaver said. "Now place your weapon on the ground and remove your armor." Sarah with the first part, setting her weapon down carefully. But as she reached for her helmet seals, she spoke quietly, barely loud enough for her armor's microphone to pick up. "Now would be good, Commander." Hal gave the signal. His security forces struck from 4 directions simultaneously, emerging from concealment with weapons blazing. The cargo bay erupted into chaos as the slavers found themselves caught between covering fire from multiple angles. The slavers reacted with impressive speed, their training evident as they immediately shifted formation to engage the new threats. But they were committed to the cargo bay, bunched together around Sarah, and that made them vulnerable. Sarah didn't waste the opportunity. As soon as the first shots were fired, she scooped up her weapon and dove behind a cargo container, immediately engaging the nearest slaver team. Her shots were precise, targeting joints in armor and exposed mechanical systems. She wasn't trying to kill them, Hal realized, but to disable their equipment. The battle lasted less than 3 minutes. Caught in crossfire, outnumbered by defending forces who knew the station's layout intimately, the slavers didn't stand a chance. Those who weren't stunned or disabled tried to retreat to their ships, only to find Hal had already sent teams to secure those vessels. When the smoke cleared, all 47 slavers were either unconscious or restrained. Station security had taken casualties, but nothing fatal thanks to the element of surprise. Sarah emerged from cover, her armor scorched and dented but intact. She moved through the restrained slavers, pulling off their helmets one by one, studying faces, looking for someone specific. "Where is he?" she demanded, grabbing one slaver by his armor. "Where is the commander, the one who runs the facility on Europa's moon?" The slaver just glared at her, refusing to answer. "Sarah," Hal called out, concerned by the intensity in her voice. "We have them, it's over." "It's not over until I find him," Sarah said, moving to the next prisoner. The one with the scar across his snout, 3 meters tall, red eyes, voice like grinding metal. He was there when they took us. He's the one who gave the orders. She was searching for specific revenge, Hal realized, for the being who had personally hurt her and her people, but he wasn't here. "He wouldn't come personally," one of the slavers finally said, laughing despite his situation. "Commander doesn't handle field operations. He sent us to retrieve valuable property. You." Sarah's hand went to her weapon, and for a moment Hal thought she might shoot the laughing slaver. But she controlled herself, stepping back with visible effort. "We need to interrogate them," Hal said, moving closer. "Find out what else they know about the operation." "Do it," Sarah said, her voice hollow. "I'll send you everything I have on their communication protocols. Maybe you can trace their command structure." She walked away, and Hal let her go, understanding that she needed space to process everything. The adrenaline was fatting, reality setting in. She had just been through another violent confrontation, had nearly been captured again, and the being she most wanted to face was still out there. The next several hours were spent securing the station and processing prisoners. Hal's interrogation teams worked efficiently, and the slavers proved surprisingly willing to talk once they realized the magnitude of their situation. Apparently, their organization had rules against attracting too much attention, and attacking a trade station definitely qualified as too much attention. "They were desperate to recover her," Lieutenant reported, reviewing the interrogation results. "The data Sarah stole has already started causing problems for their operation. 3 facilities have been raided by pirates, 2 transport convoys hit, several corrupt officials exposed and arrested by their own governments. The syndicate is hemorrhaging resources trying to contain the damage." "Good," Hal said. "That's exactly what we wanted." "But sir, they say more teams are coming. The syndicate has put a massive bounty on Sarah, dead or alive. Every hunter in 3 sectors will be looking for her." That was concerning. Sarah had proven resourceful, but she couldn't fight off every bounty hunter and slaver in the region. Hal found Sarah in the observation deck, staring out at the stars. She had removed her helmet again, her face tired and drawn. "We need to talk about your safety," Hal said without preamble. I know, Sarah replied. I heard about the bounty. I'll leave the station. No point in bringing more trouble to you. That's not what I was going to suggest. Hal moved to stand beside her. I was going to say that you need better protection. A ship, a crew, resources to stay mobile and defend yourself. I can't afford any of that. You don't have to. Captain's offer still stands. And I spoke with Merchant Kell. He's assembling what he calls a liberation fleet, ships willing to coordinate strikes against slaver facilities. They want you as an advisor, someone who knows the enemy's operations intimately. Sarah turned to look at him, surprise evident on her face. Why would they do that? Because you've proven valuable. The data you provided has already been profitable for those who acted on it. More than that, you've shown you can fight, can plan, can survive against odds that would kill most beings. That's worth investing in. He pulled up a holographic display showing a small, fast ship. This is a runner-class scout, fast, maneuverable with good sensors and decent armament. Crew captured it from slavers 2 days ago. He's offering it to you along with training and support if you'll work with them. Sarah stared at the ship, emotions playing across her face too quickly for Hal to read them all. I never wanted to be a warrior, she said quietly. I just wanted to build things, create instead of destroy. The galaxy rarely gives us what we want, Hal replied. But it gives us choices. You can accept help and continue fighting for your people, or you can go alone and probably die within a month. Those are pretty stark options. I'm not good at sugarcoating reality. Sarah laughed, a short, bitter sound. No, you're not, but you've been honest with me from the start. That counts for something. She studied the holographic ship for a long moment, then nodded. All right, I'll accept the offer, but I have conditions. Of course you do, Hal said with something like amusement. Any humans we rescue, they get safe transport and support, not just dropped somewhere and forgotten. And any intelligence we gather about other slaving operations, all species, gets shared freely. This isn't just about saving my people anymore. Agreed. Anything else? Sarah's expression hardened. When we find Commander, when we locate his facility, I get to be part of the team that takes him down. I need to look him in the eye when he realizes everything he built is burning. That's dark, Hal observed. I've earned dark, Sarah replied. I watched friends die in his facilities. I carry scars from his interrogators. I dream about those cells every time I close my eyes. So yes, when we find him, I want to be there. Hal nodded slowly. I'll make sure knows, though I suspect he'll approve. Revenge is a motivation his crew understands well. Over the next few days, Sarah prepared for her new role. She met with Captain's crew, finding herself surprisingly welcomed by the battle-hardened mercenaries. They respected competence and survival instincts, and she had both in abundance. The ship provided was better than anything Sarah had imagined owning. She spent hours learning its systems, customizing the controls, integrating her armor's technology with the ship's sensors. The crew taught her advanced combat tactics, proper maintenance protocols, and the unwritten rules of operating in the gray areas of galactic space. Hal visited her the day before she was scheduled to depart with his fleet on their first coordinated strike against a slaver facility. You've come far, he said, watching her work on her armor in the ship's small maintenance bay. From a scared fugitive to a leader in a growing resistance movement. I'm not a leader, Sarah protested. I'm just someone who got angry enough to do something. That's how most leaders start, Hal said. Anger channeled into purpose. You've given people a cause, Sarah. The beings fighting alongside you aren't just doing it for profit anymore. You've reminded them that some things are worth fighting for. Sarah set down her tools, considering his words. It's strange. A few months ago, I didn't know any of this existed. Aliens, space travel, galactic civilizations. My biggest worry was passing my math exam. And now I'm coordinating military strikes across multiple star systems. Do you regret it, learning about all this? Some days, Sarah admitted. Ignorance was simpler. But no, not really. My people deserve to know they're not alone in the universe, and the galaxy needs to know that humans aren't just victims waiting to be harvested. She stood, stretching muscles still sore from recent fighting. We're survivors, Commander. We've survived everything our planet threw at us, every disaster and disease and predator. We'll survive this too. And when we do, when we finally join the galactic community properly, it'll be on our terms. I believe you, Hal said, and he meant it. The Council made a mistake underestimating your species. They saw violence and chaos and decided you weren't ready. But they didn't see the determination, the adaptability, the sheer stubborn refusal to give up that defines humanity. He handed her a data chip. This contains everything I've been able to gather about Earth's situation. The slavers have expanded operations, but there's also resistance forming. Human military forces are learning to fight back, and word of your actions out here has reached some groups. They know someone escaped, someone is fighting for them. Sarah took the chip, her eyes bright with emotion. They know, my people know someone got out. The slavers tried to keep it quiet, but information leaks. There are reports of humans in several facilities refusing to cooperate, citing you as proof that escape is possible. You've become a symbol, Sarah. Hope that resistance isn't futile. Sarah pressed the chip to her chest, breathing hard. I can't be what they need me to be. I'm just one person. I can't save everyone. You don't have to save everyone, Hal said gently. You just have to keep fighting, keep surviving, keep proving that humans won't go quietly into slavery. The mission the next day went better than expected. The combined fleet hit a slaver facility on a remote moon, catching the defenders completely off guard. The operation Sarah had exposed was still reeling from previous attacks, their resources stretched thin, their security compromised. The facility fell in less than an hour, and 3,000 prisoners were liberated. Humans, yes, but also dozens of other species, all victims of the same brutal system. Sarah walked through the holding cells as they were opened, watching people stumble out into freedom, and she saw her own experience reflected in their eyes. The fear, the exhaustion, the desperate hope that this rescue was real and not another cruel trick. One woman, human maybe in her 30s, grabbed Sarah's arm. Are you her, the one they talk about, the girl who escaped? Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. The woman pulled her into a fierce hug, and suddenly others were there too, humans and aliens alike, surrounding her, thanking her, crying, celebrating their freedom. Sarah stood in the middle of it all, overwhelmed by the reality of what they had accomplished. Later, as the fleet prepared to transport the freed prisoners to safe locations, Sarah stood on her ship's bridge and watched the slaver facility burn. Had set charges throughout the complex, destroying equipment and records, ensuring it could never be used again. First of many, said, standing beside her. The Syndicate has 12 major facilities. We'll hit them all eventually. What about the ones running the operation? Sarah asked. The commanders, the organizers, the beings who built this system. We'll get them too, promised. Including your commander. Intel says he's at their headquarters facility deep in Syndicate space, heavily defended. Then we'll need a better plan than a direct assault, Sarah said, her tactical mind already working through possibilities. We have time, said. For now, savor this victory. 3,000 lives saved, that's not nothing. Sarah watched the burning facility a moment longer, then turned to her crew. Set course for the next target. The intel I provided shows 6 more facilities within range. Let's see how many we can liberate this month. Months passed, and the liberation campaign grew. Word spread through the underground networks about the human girl fighting the slavers, and more crews joined the cause. Some for profit, some for revenge against the Syndicate, some because they believed in the principle of freedom. The slavers fought back, naturally. They hired better mercenaries, upgraded security, tried to consolidate their operations. But every facility they closed, Sarah's network discovered 3 more. The data she had stolen was a roadmap to their entire operation, and she was systematically dismantling it. Sarah changed too. The frightened girl who had arrived at the trading station became something harder, more focused. She learned to command crews, to plan complex operations, to make the hard decisions that came with leadership. Her armor bore the marks of dozens of battles, each scar a story of survival. But she never forgot why she was fighting. Every freed prisoner reminded her of her own captivity, of friends lost and family scattered across the stars. She kept a small notebook in her ship, recording names of every human she rescued, along with information about their homes on Earth. One day, she promised herself she would return to Earth. She would walk into the facilities the slavers had built and tear them down with her own hands. She would find Maya, if her friend still lived, and everyone else she had known. But that day wasn't today. Today, she had a target to hit, a crew to lead, and slavers to remind that humans were not prey. She stood on the bridge of her ship, surrounded by beings from a dozen different species, all united in their determination to fight oppression. The navigator announced their arrival at the next target system, and Sarah felt the familiar mix of fear and anticipation that preceded combat. "All ships, this is Sarah," she said over the fleet-wide channel. "We've done this 16 times now, and every time people say it'll be the last, that the Syndicate will finally stop us. But we're still here, still fighting, still freeing prisoners who were told freedom was impossible." She looked at the tactical display, showing the slaver facility ahead of them. The beings in that facility are waiting for rescue, even if they don't know it yet. They're waiting for someone to prove that the chains can be broken, so let's not disappoint them. All ships engage on my mark. The fleet surged forward, and Sarah felt a grim satisfaction. The galaxy had written off her people as too primitive, too violent, too dangerous to join civilized society. The slavers had seen humans as easy targets, weak victims to be harvested and sold. They were learning their mistake. And Sarah, 17 years old, survivor of horrors that would break most beings, leader of a growing liberation fleet, was just getting started. Commander and the beings who had started this war would learn that humans didn't simply survive. They thrived, they adapted, and they never, ever stopped fighting for those they loved. The girl who arrived in armor had been unexpected. What she hid beneath it, what she represented, what she would become, that was something the galaxy was only beginning to understand. And before this war ended, everyone would know that humanity was not to be underestimated ever again. Before Hal could respond, Sarah was gone, moving through the command center doors with surprising speed. She looked around the room again, and Hal saw others nodding slowly. She was winning them over, not through emotion but through cold, practical assessment of opportunity and risk. Who would be very interested in that information? He tried to sit up, but Thane's arms gently but firmly pressed her back down.